this walk that I have, this spiritual walk, is an interreligious walk. And it's also a walking in two worlds, walking in an indigenous world and in a white world, walking in a native traditional world and a Christian world. And that can be tricky. Sometimes it feels like, if you know the scene I'm talking about on the one Indiana Jones movie where they had to walk on the floor and didn't go crashing through, they had to step in just the right places. Sometimes it feels like that, but I've gotten a little more nimble and a little more self-advocating, that I'm just like, this is who I am and what I do, so if this is not the space for me, just let me know. Excuse me. I walk the red road, the words that we use for following traditional indigenous spiritual path. I identify spiritually, as Lisa said, as a Native American, traditionalist, Christian. There's no hierarchy there. The reason I list them the way I do is because I've been a Native American traditionalist longer than I've been a Christian. So that's how that pans out. I'm closely tied to the earth, to the elements, to the creatures, the winged ones, the swimmers, flyers, crawlers, the one-legged ones, the plants, the grandfathers and grandmothers of the one-leggeds, the trees, the plants that are tiny like lichen, and the rock people. My belief system is interreligious. The weaving of Christian beliefs with Native American traditional beliefs, some people think could be tricky. But weaving Christian beliefs, rituals, and practices into my faith walk does in no way negate or diminish my Native traditional practice. Conversely, Native American traditional framework in no way compromises my Christianity. My lived experience is that the indigenous and the Christian components enhance and strengthen each other. And I could not be the person of faith that I am without this integration. Rituals and ceremonies from both traditions are equally sacred to me. When I'm participating in ceremonies and rituals with my indigenous circle, and when I'm participating in ceremonies, rituals, worship, and sacrament in my Christian church, whether I'm in the pulpit or the pew, the engagement, the drawing close, the transformative power of those experiences are all sacred. During gatherings in my indigenous circle, the teachings we give and receive, the songs we sing, the practices we share have been handed down for generations, the same as the teachings of Christianity have been handed down until they reached our time. And it's our job, no matter which tradition, what tradition you're in, to participate in that and move it forward to the next folks who are coming along. We come together not only to preserve our cultural spiritual heritage, but also to commune together with Creator in gratitude and humility as a gathered community. Regardless of the ceremony, Creator is there with us. It's a time of sacred connection. The Sacrament of Communion is similarly a moment of sacred connection for me. When the elements are consecrated and the words of institution are spoken, the combination of honor, gratitude, invitation, and acknowledgement creates a door through which Spirit walks and joins us in the space. The room gets joyously crowded with the spirits of the ancestors, the Spirit of Christ, and the gathered community of faith. Communion is a place where my indigenous traditional beliefs and my practices from Christianity meet one another. The indigenous beliefs that I have and practices have informed some things that I do. One example is that when I am taking communion, when I step up to that table, if I am taking communion as opposed to serving, I take off my glasses. I don't want any human-made barrier between me and the face of Spirit. This is a symbolic surrender of here I am. And I do the same thing at native pipe ceremonies for the same reason. I feel that at that moment, that in either of those contexts, there's this vibrating spiritual link between anyone who has ever participated in that sacrament together, in that practice or ritual together, and we're all in there together with Spirit. The blessed mystery that is our Creator, Gitchimanidu, God, the presence, the source, the all, manifests during the sacrament and during traditional indigenous ceremonies. I experience moments when the holy breath of the divine beloved thins out the mists that veil my understanding of the divine complexity. For a sacred second, I can grasp the enormity of it all. Only for a moment, but that moment is precious to me. Being interreligious means I can walk this blended path that is uniquely mine as my whole authentic self. When I began to explore and engage with Christianity about 7 years ago, I took great care, and great care was taken with me. My wife had started attending a UCC church. I was actually on my way home from an activism conference, was calling her on my way home because I was the rider, not the driver. So I was calling her, hey, how's it going, hon? You know, how was your weekend? Oh, I got up and I did this and I did that, and I went to church, and I was like, I said, would you repeat that? She said, yeah, I went to church. I'm like, really? Okay. I'll be excited to hear about that because Jen had been unchurched her whole life. So that was just startling to me. In a good way, though. So when I got home and we had conversation, the more she spoke about this place, this community, and this pastor, it was like, I've got to see this. I've got to meet the people who got you so fired up. I just have to. So when I started going, I found this amazing welcome, this extravagant, radical hospitality at this church. I went with Jen to church about, probably once every 3 weeks, something like that. And when I wasn't with her, I was out in the woods doing what I would normally do, doing my solitary practice on my own. So after maybe my third visit there, at the end of worship, the pastor said, Lynn, can I talk to you? And I totally felt like I was being called to the principal's office. I'm like, what did I say? What did I do? Oh, my goodness. So she sat me down, and she said, we're so excited that Jen's here. We love her. We're excited to meet you. It's great that you're here. And then she finger wagged at me. And I was like, oh, here it comes. She says, I just want you to know that I know you have other practices, rituals, traditions that bring meaning and fulfillment to your life. And don't you dare give up any of that for anything we do here. Don't you dare. And I was just like, sign me up. I had no idea there could be like a Christian space that was like, bring all of who you are. So that was how I met the UCC. Most of my indigenous community are pretty supportive and awesome in regard to my Christian experience. But there are some who just can't understand or forgive my baptism, my integration into Christianity, and quite frankly, my studies at a Christian seminary, because that's kind of how they see it. They do not get it, and that's okay. I was baptized, and I received my true name, that big long name I told you, 2 weeks apart. So I was literally named and claimed by both my traditions. And it was just an amazing thing. I identify as Two-Spirit, which is a beautiful, complex, wholly indigenous, non-binary identity. I am fully aware that I have blind spots and biases. I'm very sensitive to colonial influences, which some of my professors can attest to. Some of them are in the room right now. So sometimes that just really is ouchy for me. If my son Josh were here, he would tell you about the time when we went to Coit Tower in San Francisco. We got out of the car, and I turned around and I looked, and there's a 12-foot statue of Christopher Columbus. And he just kind of went. And instead of, being embarrassed and hiding somewhere, he's like, go give him hell, Mom. And I did. I am a fully flawed, beautifully broken human. I believe that my brokenness increases my capacity for empathy and loving kindness exponentially. I'm devout in my faith walk, no matter where that's happening. And I think it helps me be more fluid and flexible and to meet people where and how they are. So being interreligious means I get to be fully me, 24/7, 365. And that's beautiful. My identity as a Native Traditionalist Christian has caused more than a few people to ask if I was not a walking contradiction. After all, my family tree does contain the oppressed and the oppressor. And to that question, I say, no. My identity as a Native Traditionalist Christian is an embodiment of reconciliation. Indigenous cultures and Christianity have a long history of conflict and horrible things. And that could have caused a fatal fracture to my spirit. But by living authentically and integrating both of these traditions together, I have found blessed integration and peace. Aho. I'd like to explain my amen word. Aho is a word in Lakota that is kind of, sort of, amen-ish. But it's also, I hear what you are saying. I agree with you. I affirm your place in this conversation. Thank you. My heart is full, and I couldn't possibly hold any more. So as we move into a time of drumming, I want to just give a few little things about why I do this drumming spirituality that I do. I'm going to do part of it here, but then I'll go out by the drums and talk about them for a minute. I get asked all the time, rhythmic spirituality, what does that mean and why do you do it? Well, I do it because I must. About probably 20 years ago, I was sitting in a camp. My wife and I used to do historical reenactment, and we were sitting around a campfire one evening with our friends. Some people were playing flutes, and people were telling stories. And one of our co-campers is somebody that I've known since college, so I've known her for 40 years, and she plays a beautiful flute. I mean, she can pick up almost any flute and just make magic. And she also has a drum, but she's not as called to the drum. She stopped playing her flute, walked into her tent, and came out with this enormous Northwest Coast painted raven drum, reached over my shoulder with the drum and the stick, and she said, I think it's time that you pick this up. And since Bonnie knew me so well, I paid attention, and so I drummed. It's like I've never drummed on a drum like that before, but I can, and it was wonderful. And I went home and I said, Jen, I have to make one. And that started this passion. And I've found that by exploring rhythm, I can experience spirit in ways that I don't have to make words about. Sometimes I've got words for stuff that aren't appropriate to throw out in various spaces, or sometimes there just aren't. It's just, you have to get it out, whatever that is. So that's part of it. But another key part of this for me is that it is so universal, so unifying. Every culture on the planet has drumming in its history. Many still do. And if we think about our experiences as incarnated beings, the piece that makes my voice shake, is thinking about the fact that the first vibration we ever felt and or the first sound we ever heard was the beating of a drum, our mother's heart, as we were waiting to be born. And as I embraced that reality, I just really had to embrace a practice in such a way that I could express spiritually through rhythm. This is me not dropping this on the floor. There we go. Okay, so I'm going to talk a little bit about a few of these things and just give you the rules. It's one rule. If it's on the blanket, it's free to use. If it's sitting in front of someone's chair, that means they intend to use it. And as we start drumming, I'm going to give Bill a cue here, and he's going to start playing the flute. And then when you feel called to pick up an instrument and contribute to the rhythms, do that. If you're playing something and you're like, I want to try something else, feel free. Get up, put with that one back, and go up, get something else. They're all here to be enjoyed and explored. Some of these are Goodwill finds. I see 1, 2, 3 Goodwill finds. And all of the octagon-shaped ones are drums that I made. The round one up in this upper corner is one that I made. The drum that I'll play has a fun story. I'm part of a drum circle in northern Indiana, and we go around and work with special needs populations from little kids all the way up to elder. And we play with them and for them. First we play for them, and then we put shakers and drums and things in their hands, and we've seen metamorphosis that their caregivers have never seen. Literally at one elementary school I was at, there was this girl who was very limited in her physical ability. She was kind of in a kind of folded position most of the time, had a very specially stylized chair for her needs. And this big djembe here, her name's Bertha, and I had Bertha that day, and I walked over to this girl in her chair, and I asked her caregiver if it would be all right if I played for her, if I put it so she could feel the vibrations through her legs. She said, absolutely, it won't hurt her, she's fine. I'm like, that's cool, all right. So I had the strap over my shoulder and had the head facing her, was kind of standing next to her, so the bottom of the drum was against her feet. And I asked him, like, can you hear that? And she started making vocalizations. And I watched over a period of about 2 minutes as this girl really unfolded. She was making an absolute effort to unfold, and she was able to stretch one hand out and put it on the head so she could feel it through her hand as I was drumming. I was in tears. Her teacher was in tears. The teacher is like, I've got to take a picture of this. Her mother will never believe it if I don't. And so knowing that rhythm reaches places that other things can't reach, and that rhythm succeeds where words fail, is why I do this work, and why I do it for fun. And once I started making drums, it's been so addictive. The first one I made was 2005. So, and the round one up here in the corner is the second one I made, and I've lost track after that. I've done workshops in various places. I did a really, really cool workshop with a group of German foreign exchange students who came together with some UCC youth in the Young Ambassadors program. And so this whole group of 50 kids made drums together. And so it's just this delight to know that there's 20 drums made under my instruction in Germany. So that's just like way cool. So I'm going to put down the mic, and I'm going to pick up a drum. And I will tell you that story about my drum just super quick. So we do this work. We go all over. We do this. People call me, text me, email me. Former students that are teachers now are like, oh, would you please come? You know, lots of different things. And one day I was working at Indiana University in South Bend. I worked there for 17 years. And everybody there pretty much knew me as Linda. That's my given first name. You know, you fill out your employment paperwork with all that. So that's how they kind of met me. And I've been trying to, flip them over to Lynn, and it hasn't worked. But when I'm out in the community with Native folks, with my seminary peers, with my drum people, with my activist friends, I'm Lynn. So one day I come back from lunch, and there's this box sitting on my desk. I'm like, okay. And it's addressed to Lynn Young, School of Education, Indiana University, South Bend. No street address, no nothing. No return address. I open this box, and the ceramic drum you see sitting under the chair over there was in the box. Very well packed and lovely. No note of explanation, nothing. But it wasn't too long after we had done a couple really powerful working sessions with special needs folks, and I have to think that it was somebody that was touched by that, a caregiver, a parent, organization, whatever it was. So that one is usually when I come out and do things like this, that's usually the draw I play. So I'm going to set this down, and we're going to make some sacred music. Hit it, Bill.
Very quickly, I'm going to play a song that I was asked to play, a traditional song. And I thought about it, and I thought, well, I know another traditional song that's not native that's appropriate for this time of year. So I believe I'll play that for the reflection, and then we'll go into the drumming.
thank you for making the Spirit complete, for without you, it would not have been.
It is not easy for some folks to wrap their heads around the idea of having a blended spiritual life. Walking in two worlds presents challenges on both sides of the spiritual space. Some Christians believe that to identify as Christian excludes all other forms of spiritual expression. They assume that those who identify with Christianity have left all of that other stuff behind. For many indigenous people, Christianity is seen in one light, as the religion of the oppressor, the vehicle of colonization, which obliterated untold numbers of their ancestors and decimated their cultures. During the first wave of colonization, Christianity meant forced assimilation and cultural devastation. It meant that our ancestors were abruptly, systematically, and totally deprived of their indigeneity. Some indigenous people cannot align with Christianity for that reason. To do so would make them feel like cultural traitors. Indigenous people who include Christianity in their spirituality may be perceived as cultural traitors as well. Creator, in her limitless, loving exuberance, created us all to be precisely who we are, precisely as we are. The gift of our unique identity is to be cherished and nurtured, no matter what that identity looks like. While it isn't easy or tidy, there are no expectations that it should be. Our common connection to Creator, to the source, to God, is embedded in the very core of who we are, each and every one of us. In this reality, we are whole and we are reconciled.
I will now offer smudging. First, I have to ask, is there anyone that is sensitive in the room? Apparently no, okay. I'm going to kind of go back over by the door because I never know if the smudge is just going to lightly smolder or be like, so if it gets too smoky, I can always step out the door a bit. So this is a variety of sage that will actually grow and reroot in northern Indiana. The lovely thick leaves that you may be used to seeing, that's northern white sage, and it doesn't like Indiana very well. So that's why I use this, and the sweetgrass stick on the altar table, and this mugwort sage are sacred herbs that were grown on my farm. So I feel really good about sharing that with you. And the whole idea of smudging is just, we also call it blessing down. You know, I need a good blessing down. You know, I feel like I've been through the mill, I need a good blessing down. So if that calls to you, if you feel like that's something that you would like to participate in, feel free to kind of come over to the space by the door. As feels right to you, as you feel called. When we smudge, and I just totally did what I'm going to tell you in a minute that we don't do. When we light a fire traditionally or we smudge, we try not to put our breath into it. It's not about us. It's about the element of fire interacting with the sage. So I'm just going to be here-ish. So whoever's interested, come on. drum, and you'll be amazed at how it's like a funnel. It brings all the energies of everyone else's drumming right into your hands. It's amazing. friends, siblings, members of the co-creation, blessings on your life, on your ministry, on your studies, on all you hold dear, on the concerns you hold for our world. Know that when we combine our spiritual energies toward addressing the wrongs that exist, it matters. So I bid you peace, comfort, and the stamina you need to get through the rest of the semester, whether you're grading or writing or whatever. In all of God's beautiful names, Aho.